What inspired you to write a book of this nature?
Well, I've done another book which was very wordy. It was very much like the Forgiveness Project is, based on true stories, written testimonies, and it's all words. And I was really wanting to find a different audience and look for younger people to become interested in this subject. And I think the graphic form, the graphic book, is incredibly helpful in that respect. I also really like this because forgiveness is quite a slippery subject, and there's something about imagery which you can't pin down, which is more about suggestion rather than asserting something. And for me, it was just a completely new way of looking at the subject, which could also bring a little bit of humour into a subject which can be very serious.
Yeah, I mean, from a psychological perspective, it's talking about forgiveness, thinking about forgiveness. I mean, it can be very daunting and threatening. And I also, like you, found it easier to talk about the subject in a lighter way. And then it becomes, and also using the stories, it's not necessarily your story. You know, it's almost exploring those issues through someone else's perspective. I guess for me, so in psychology, about 20 years ago or so, you would have found not a single serious study on forgiveness. You know, most people would have associated forgiveness with theology, theological studies, religion, and it was really exciting to be part of that movement, to own the concept of forgiveness and bring it into psychology.
So far we've received some early reviews from readers, and they've been incredibly encouraging. I think we found this incredibly very different, quite perfect balance between the science, the research, and the real stories, the personal testimonies.
Yeah.
And as you say, it's an approachable vehicle that we've got, and that people who I think wouldn't have been interested in the subject before, it's a way in for them. You see, everything we do at the Forgiveness Project is about storytelling. So I really do believe in the power of story, because I think if you throw facts at people, they tend to fade. There's something about stories which stick. And there's quite a lot of research, I think, around, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but around storytelling increasingly. This is why businesses use story to sell their products. This very thing, the stories stick. Yes. And they reach across rifts of gender, of creed, even of enemies. Yeah. And also, it's about collaboration, and it's about overcoming differences and defences by listening to the story of the other. I mean, definitions are really difficult. I'm often asked for a definition, I'm sure you are, and I don't know what you use, but I tend to use, rightly or wrongly, forgiveness is making peace with something you cannot change. But then I qualify that by saying it doesn't say all, because actually forgiveness requires a degree of compassion and empathy, I think. Makes it different to letting go and acceptance. It's that little bit more.
Yes.
That's why it's so hard to put into one statement.
Yes.
And they tend to be very dry.
Yes.
The academics.
Yes.
Statements unbelievably dry.
Yes, point taken. So in reaction to that dryness, academic dryness, so what I try to offer is a practical definition or understanding, which is, so for me, forgiveness lies somewhere between two things, two decisions you have to make after the hurtful event. First, you have to think and decide for yourself, how important is that relationship with the person who hurt you? And the other question you have to find an answer to is, how likely is it for the offense to be repeated? So you kind of balance things between the importance, the value that you attach to the relationship, and the exploitation risk. Now, everyone has to sort that out for themselves, and we don't, again, prescribe anything in that book. But it kind of turns this very elusive concept into a series of decisions or a combination of decisions. Is this relationship important to me? Or do I let go of it? Yes?
Does that not slightly suggest that forgiveness is the same as reconciliation, which it isn't? Because you can forgive and walk away from a relationship, can't you?
Absolutely.
Because in your heart you don't
Absolutely.
carry any anger or bitterness anymore.
Yeah.
And yet you know that that is a damaging relationship for whatever reason.
Yes. So, I mean, I can now give you an answer from a research perspective. We have shown that forgiveness can predict reconciliation, but it doesn't, reconciliation doesn't have to follow. Yeah. So oftentimes people can actually just say that it's fine, we let go, I accept, I've learned, I've taken a lesson and wish you all the best. And that's the last you might have seen of that person. In other instances, people use that as another opportunity to deepen their relationship. The history of their relationship becomes more dynamic. The other thing I was going to say was earlier, what you mentioned was about the challenges of forgiveness or how to define forgiveness. I think oftentimes what we forget also is there's an element of self-forgiveness, which it's not really well researched. And my understanding of self-forgiveness comes mainly through stories of real-life people. It seems almost to be much harder than forgiving others.
Definitely.
Who did you have in mind when you were writing this book?
I had in mind, for one, teenagers and young people, people who don't enjoy reading, people who like comics and graphic novels, and people, this is the difficult one, who are not interested in forgiveness one bit, and who think it's a wishy-washy, religious, as I said before, just for the morally superior and the mentally strong.
Yeah.
And you?
Well, I mean, I spend a lot of time with students, so I think just talking to them informally about the topic, there's a hunger for forgiveness. Everyone can relate to that concept at a personal level. I hope that the unlikely reader will be gifted with that book or come across the book. And the other thing I would love to do, anyone who reads this book, to give us feedback.
Yes.
I'd love to hear about what has worked for them and what hasn't worked, because I hope this is certainly not the last book on forgiveness, and who knows, in 10 years' time there'll be hopefully more stories and more research that will advance and move forward our understanding of this fascinating but yet real concept.